They say time heals all wounds, but they're wrong. Time only teaches you how to hide the scars under expensive silk and a cold, calculated smile. I stood there, clutching my coat as the wind whipped through the iron gates of the Miller estate, the place I once called home. 10 years ago, I wasn't the woman I am today. I was a daughter who believed in loyalty, a woman who thought her father's love was unconditional. But as the rain soaked through my hair that night, I realized that in the world of the ultra-rich, love is just another currency, and mine had just plummeted to zero. My father didn't even look me in the eye when he gave the order. He stood by the fireplace, his silhouette tall and unforgiving, while my stepsister, Cassandra, whispered poisonous lies into his ear. She wanted the empire, and she knew that as long as I was in the picture, she'd always be second best. "You've embarrassed this family, Elena," my father said, his voice like dry parchment. "To think I trusted you with the charity funds, only for you to gamble them away." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that Cassandra had set me up, that the gambling debts were her own, hidden under my name. But the betrayal was so heavy, it felt like I was drowning in mid-air. I was 30 years old when they threw me out. No money, no references, just the clothes on my back and a burning sense of injustice that felt like a fever. For the first few years, I lived in places I wouldn't let my dog sleep in now. I worked 3 jobs, my feet swelling in cheap shoes, my hands chapped from cleaning offices of people who used to invite me to their galas. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd remember the smirk on Cassandra's face as the gates closed behind me. I didn't just want my life back. I wanted to take everything she thought she had won. I spent my nights studying the market like a woman possessed. I saw patterns where others saw chaos. I started small, investing every cent I saved into tech startups that everyone else ignored. I became a ghost in the financial world, a shadow that bought, sold, and conquered without ever showing a face. I grew older, wiser, and much, much colder. My voice, once soft and seeking approval, became a weapon of precision. I built Ares Capital from the dirt of my despair, and by the time I hit 40, I owned half the street. And then, the call I'd been waiting for finally came. The Miller Empire, my father's legacy, Cassandra's playground, was bleeding out. They had made too many bad bets, and the sharks were circling. I sat in my darkened office, a glass of amber liquid in my hand, watching the city lights flicker like dying stars. "They're desperate, Ms. Miller," my assistant said, not knowing she was talking to the air they had tried to erase. "They need a bailout by Monday, or the bank seizes the house." I took a slow sip, feeling the burn in my throat. "Let them wait until Sunday night," I replied, my voice steady and calm. "I want them to feel the walls closing in, and then we buy it, all of it." The silence of my penthouse was a luxury I had paid for with years of struggle. As I sat there, the reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a woman I barely recognized. A woman with sharp eyes and a heart that had long since turned to stone. I remembered the nights I spent in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, the smell of cheap detergent clinging to my skin, staring at the ceiling and counting the seconds until I had to wake up for my shift at the diner. Back then, my father's face haunted my dreams. Now, he was just a man on a balance sheet, a liability waiting to be liquidated. By Sunday evening, the news was all over the financial networks. The Miller name, once synonymous with old money elegance, was being dragged through the dirt. Cassandra had tried to play the role of the visionary CEO, but she had the business acumen of a spoiled child. She had over-leveraged the family's holdings into a failing real estate venture in the Hamptons, and when the market dipped, She didn't have the grit to hold on. She was panicking. I knew this because I had spent the last 6 months quietly buying up their debt, moving like a predator in the tall grass, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I picked up the phone and dialed my lead counsel, a man who had seen the worst of Wall Street and lived to tell the tale. "Is the paperwork ready, Marcus?" I asked, my voice as smooth as silk and twice as strong. He confirmed that the bank had accepted our offer. Ares Capital, my company, now owned the primary mortgage on the Miller estate and 60% of their corporate debt. I wasn't just a shareholder anymore. I was their landlord. I was the one who decided if they slept in their silk sheets one more night, or if they woke up on the sidewalk. "They've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning at 9, Marcus informed me. "They're expecting a representative from the bank to discuss the restructuring. They have no idea it's us." I felt a cold shiver of satisfaction run down my spine. "No representative," I said firmly. "I'll be going in myself. It's time I saw my family again. I want to see if my father still has that look of disappointment in his eyes when he realizes he's working for me now." That night, I didn't sleep much. I spent the hours preparing, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted everything to be perfect. I chose a charcoal grey power suit, tailored to perfection, a suit that said I was here for business, not for a reunion. I wore my mother's pearl earrings, the only things I had managed to take with me the night I was exiled. They were a reminder of a time before the greed took over, a time when I still believed in the sanctity of home. As the sun began to rise over the Manhattan skyline, painting the buildings in shades of bruised purple and gold, I felt a strange sense of peace. For 10 years, I had been a ghost, a name whispered in the halls of power but never seen. Today, the ghost was coming home to claim what was hers. I thought about Cassandra, probably pacing her bedroom, frantically trying to find a way to save her reputation. I thought about my father, likely sitting in his study, wondering where it all went wrong. They were looking for a miracle. Instead, they were getting me. I stepped into my car, the leather interior smelling of success and expensive perfume. "The Miller Building," I told the driver. As we pulled into the chaotic traffic of Midtown, I looked out at the people rushing to their jobs, unaware of the war that was about to reach its climax in a boardroom 300 feet above them. The world was about to find out that the daughter they discarded wasn't just alive. She was the one holding the keys to their kingdom. When we arrived, the lobby was a hive of frantic energy. Reporters were gathered near the elevators, smelling the blood in the water. I walked past them, my heels clicking rhythmically on the polished floor, a sound that felt like a countdown. I didn't hide my face today. I held my head high. The security guards, new men who didn't recognize the girl who used to play in these halls, stood aside as I entered the private elevator. The doors opened on the top floor. The air here was different, thick with the scent of old wood, expensive cigars, and fear. I could hear voices coming from the boardroom, my father's voice, now frail and trembling, and Cassandra's high-pitched, desperate tone. I paused at the heavy oak doors, taking one last deep breath. This was the moment I had lived for every single day for a decade. I pushed the doors open, and for the first time in 10 years, the room went deathly silent. The heavy oak doors swung open with a groan that felt like the shifting of tectonic plates. I stepped into the room, my heels striking the floor with a rhythmic, lethal precision. The boardroom was stifling, filled with the scent of expensive cologne and the sour tang of panic. My father, Arthur, sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of exhaustion. Beside him, Cassandra was hunched over a laptop, her fingers flying across the keys as if she could type her way out of a multi-million-dollar deficit. "I told the front desk no interruptions," Cassandra snapped, her voice shrill and jagged. She didn't even look up. The bank representative is already 10 minutes late, and we don't have time for... She stopped mid-sentence as she finally raised her eyes. The colour drained from her face so fast it was as if a plug had been pulled. The room went deathly silent. "Hello, Cassandra," I said, my voice low and smooth, like velvet over steel. I walked to the far end of the table, pulling out the chair directly opposite my father. "You always were bad at keeping people waiting. It's a sign of weakness, you know." My father's hand, the one that used to hold a cane with such authority, began to tremble. "Elena," he croaked. His eyes searched my face, looking for the broken girl he had exiled 10 years ago. But that girl was buried under layers of cold ambition and success. "What is the meaning of this? How did you even get past security?" "Security works for the person who owns the building, Father," I replied, leaning back in the leather chair and crossing my legs. "And as of 2 hours ago, that person is me." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single gold-embossed folder. I slid it across the mahogany table. It glided effortlessly, stopping right at his fingertips. "Ari's capital has completed the hostile takeover. I've bought your debt, your patents, and your dignity. Every brick of this empire now belongs to me." Cassandra let out a hysterical, ugly laugh. "You? With what money? You were a waitress, a nobody. You probably spent the last decade in the gutter. This is a scam, Father. Call the police." I didn't even blink. I just looked at her, a long, silent stare that made her laughter die in her throat. "I wasn't in the gutter, Cassandra. I was in the shadows. While you were busy spending the family fortune on yachts and vanity projects, I was building a ghost. Every time you lost a contract to a silent competitor over the last 3 years, that was me. Every time your suppliers hiked their prices and squeezed your margins, that was me too. I didn't just want to buy you out. I wanted to dismantle you from the inside." My father opened the folder. His eyes skimmed the legal documents, the foreclosure notices, the transfer of titles, the signature of the primary creditor. His breath hitched. "Ares, the god of war," he whispered, looking at me with a mixture of horror and realization. "I thought it was appropriate," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "Since you declared war on me the night you threw me out into that storm without a penny. You told me I was a leech and a thief. Well, look at us now. You're the one begging for a bailout, and I'm the one holding the checkbook." Cassandra lunged across the table, trying to grab the papers, but I caught her wrist. My grip was like iron. For 10 years, I had dreamt of this moment, the moment she realized she was powerless. I leaned in close, so she could see the lack of mercy in my eyes. "You have 60 minutes to clear your desk, Cassandra. If you're still here at 10 a.m., I'll have security toss you out exactly the same way you had them toss me. No coat, no purse, just the clothes on your back." I released her and she stumbled back, sobbing with a mixture of rage and terror. My father looked at me, tears welling in his aged eyes. "Elena, please. This house, this company, it's all I have. Where am I supposed to go?" I stood up, smoothing the front of my suit. "You have a small pension that I wasn't cruel enough to touch. It's enough for a 1-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. It's more than you gave me." I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the brass handle. "The estate is being converted into a community centre for underprivileged kids. I think Mom would have liked that. It's time that house saw some light instead of the darkness you brought into it." As I walked out of the room, the sound of Cassandra's wailing and my father's silence followed me. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I felt a weight lift off my heart that I had carried for a decade. The revenge didn't feel loud or violent. It felt quiet. It felt like a debt finally being settled in full. I walked out of the Miller building and into the bright Manhattan sun. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't looking back. I was home.